Okay, so here we have Euros Pichler. Whoops. I'm butchering that. I'm messing that up.
I didn't even try. I don't know. I guess we can look at his page. He's from Slovenia. 105 lifter from Slovenia. He's actually the best 105 in the country. I believe he won nationals there in 2022 and 2024. And he went to Worlds a couple of times. Pretty strong deadlift. I believe like 350. Yeah, 350 kilos, getting close to 800 pounds on deadlifts, which is fairly competitive for 105.
Still squats like 310.
Squats 310, a pretty decent squat as well for the weight class. And benches
like 167.
167.
Yep.
Which is a big, I guess, a limiter or a big weakness. We'll be going over his programming. We'll focus more on the bench programming. It seems like the squat and deadlift are okay. If we were to look at the squat and deadlift a lot more, we'll need a lot more context. Like you need to ask specific questions about like his fatigue patterns and look at his movement. But the program itself for squats and deadlifts looks fairly good. Like it can work for sure. For bench, I think there are some red flags. Looking at the bench programming, is there anything specific that pops out right away? Like for me, before you go, you look at the top here, like it shows you the structure, the split, you see the terms. And like I think just for bench, looking at bench and like the terms that are used, the labels, you can kind of tell what the theme is. Like you have like a tertiary day on bench and a quaternary whatever day on bench, which tells you that the intensity on those days is low.
Yeah, even if he maybe even feels strong on a certain day, he's going to be like, no.
It's like quaternary.
Today we're going down.
Yeah. It's a tertiary day, so I have to lift lighter.
Like I have to be careful, or else it won't work or something.
Yeah,
that's a mistake that I see with a lot of people on their bench is they pick out the days before they actually figure out what the days are actually, right? So it's like quaternary, I have to go down because it's supposed to be down. Instead of, wow, I feel kind of strong today, maybe that is something, or maybe that's something that I can do. And bench recovers so fast that it's like, you have to know when to pick those battles, and you can usually actually battle more often than you think during the week, instead of like taking it down.
Yeah, and I think that's when like the labels, those like days labels, those like that's when they're misused, because like you have someone who thinks bench has to be at like tier levels. Like I need to have a day that's like 70%, one day like 75, 80, 85. It's like, no, maybe you can actually have the intensity be a little bit closer structure, cluster, rather than having like those wide changes in intensity. So like the first thing that pops out to me is I would just remove the labels out of the days, so you don't have to think about, okay, this day I have to lift this light on bench, or this is my heavy day, or this is my third heavy day, so I have to lift a little bit lighter, but not as heavy, whatever.
Another thing I want to mention is a lot of people that are really good at squatting and deadlifting, they tend to get over to bench and they start treating their bench in the same fatigue standard as their squat and deadlift. So like, I need maximum amount of rest because my deadlift takes maximum amount of rest. And it's like, bench is its own thing. Mm-hmm. Like I've literally been telling people probably for the last month now that you could literally go play a sport, not squat and deadlift, and then you could probably come in here and just bench and just have like a whole separate bench program and advance your bench in its own little game, like its own little set of rules. So the rules don't apply is what I'm trying to say with the bench as do the squat and the deadlift. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's a little taller, so of course, like even if he's maxed with grip, it's gonna resemble a little bit more close grip because he doesn't have enough space to get to his chest, so he has to get a little bit more down on it, on the bar path. Of course he's touching low because he doesn't have the space. But then when it's time to press, he has to return back to where he was, and that's why you see that big flare with the elbows like halfway through to kind of drive it through.
Do you think technique is a big bottleneck, is a big limiter for him? Or do you think he can make progress through this?
I actually think that through programming, he can fix some of this technique, like in general as well. Because like I'm 1,000% sure if he was to try and even do something like a tempo on the way down, this form would not work. Like he would just get to here, run out of space, and then just dump off into this,
But looking at the technique on its own, anything with the feet position, how he sets up his like wrists or elbow position that you think can be improved? Is the belt needed, not needed?
Well, he's using the belt kind of to help him with that stability at the bottom, because that's where he lacks it, and that's why his feet are also so far back. Is because he's pulling the bar into a position that's uncomfortable, so he has to stabilize as much as he can with his legs, with the with the belt, with everything, because that he has a really big dead zone like at the chest, and so he's using everything that he can to stabilize it in that dead zone.
How do we fix it then?
How do we fix it?
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of the hard part. If it was me, the first thing that I would do is I would have him try a slightly more neutral foot position.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
And he can use the belt for now, just because that's one of the things kind of keeping him feeling like a little stable. But I want him to see if driving with a neutral foot position will actually help him to reach, because he's running out of space. We know that he's running out of space about 2 inches off the chest on the way down. So moving the feet out provides more space. What'll happen is that'll allow the elbow position to come out a little bit more out sooner. We're just giving him space to genuinely get down to his chest, so that he doesn't have to go dive in and then recover from that position, because we don't want to have to recover. Maybe if it's like the biggest weight ever that you've ever hit, you have to like slightly misgroove or turn your neck to the left or whatever to get it done. That's okay. But if all your reps are being done like this, then you're just creating a big dead zone. Like you're creating just a weakness from here like the whole time. So
we would say it's like he can still make progress with this if programming is on point, and if there's like some slight technique changes. It's not really like a hopeless technique. It's really solid. Like it's good.
And often I find a lot of lifters that have trouble with bench, I don't want to say they're not patient with it, but what they'll do is they treat it kind of like their squat and their deadlift, where if it doesn't seem like something good is happening, they'll change it, or they'll make some adjustment that maybe more or less what he was doing that led him to a PR like a year ago, maybe that a lot of that was good, and maybe he shifted the gears so far thinking that, wow, maybe I'm just not doing something right, and then I completely change like what I need to do, or I completely shift. Like bench can be sensitive is what I'm saying. It's like it can be sensitive to your movement. You could have just misgrooved something out, and then the program could have been more or less fine, but of course, like you have 1 or 2 lifts that kind of don't go your way through the thing, and you try and change the programming a little too much. That can also be a thing, because in his description he said, I've done 2 times a week benching, I've done up to 4 times a week benching. Like I've tried all of these things. One is to wonder, or I actually wonder, my curiosity is how often is he changing his bench programming? And then more than anything, how often is he hitting a PR on, say, an accessory, or how often is he hitting a rep PR, or like how quick really is this progress, and is it lining up with realistic expectations, or is it lining up with like, oh, I'm trying to put 5 kilos on my bench every block?
Technique is decent. There's like a couple of like technical suggestions that might be helpful, and from there we can just dive into the programming aspect.
So for me personally, I look at quaternary, secondary, tertiary, primary.
Completely delete those.
Yeah,
take those out.
I was about to say he definitely believes that his bench is causing a lot more fatigue than it probably is. Just my opinion. He's really he's rolling up on his primary day, and he's like, wow, I need almost a whole week. Because if you look at it, he's basically benching here, and then he's taking
Because if you
a
look
lot
at
of time off,
Yeah,
and
you-
then he's low, medium, and then low again for like almost 3 days.
so you have from like I think that's from Tuesday to Saturday.
Yeah.
You have like one exposure in between, and it's a tertiary exposure, which I mean we'll look at like what those actually look like.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. I don't think you need pause Larson for 2 count. So there's a lot of like self-limiting. Like the variation itself is very limiting. You have 8s, it's Larson, it's paused for 2 count.
Yeah,
How much can you
not,
actually do?
Not really going to load a whole lot on that. It's impossible to load a lot on
How
that.
much can you actually do on that?
Yeah.
And I think looking at each day and be like what's the purpose of this day?
Yep.
Why am I doing Larson 8s? Is
Yep.
it for hypertrophy for this person? He's pretty well developed.
Yeah, I don't think he needs more. Like I mean, everyone could get more hypertrophy. I'm just saying the bottleneck might not be that in this case.
Yeah, it's like why are we doing Larson 8s?
Yeah.
I think it's because it's a quaternary.
My only guess
day.
is he's bleeding. He thinks he's bleeding out so bad on the primary that he needs to heal. He's like, okay, I'm going to heal on this quaternary day, and then I'm going to put together the secondary day, right? So Larson 8s, cool. Because to me, when I look at this, I pretend like, okay, primary day, he's really high, right? So he's at the highest he could be, or he's trying to be, and then he drops everything down. So he's dropped the intensity down, drop everything down on this first day. Let's see if he picks it up a little bit on the next day.
The secondary day has to be a little bit heavier.
Yeah, well, we hope so, right?
It's 5s, heavier 5s.
So he's able to recover it up to 132.
That's week 1. I'm assuming he goes up to like maybe like 140 plus.
Yeah, let's see if he actually gets higher. 135.
Very small jump.
He stays at 135. So
you
that,
can- that
that's
tells you-
already your sign right there.
That's another sign that things are not progressing from week to week. If you don't see this like secondary day making progress, the chances are your primary day is not going to make progress either.
Exactly. There's no momentum.
So the secondary day is not being set up. So your day 2 is not building momentum. It's not increasing. He goes.
And then he finally gets it up to like
Pushes
142. He just pushes it really hard at the
very
very
end.
and
And
then he deloads it off. Yeah. So he gets it up to like an 8.5 RPE.
How does that affect his primary? Goes up to 157 for an 8.5. So it's not really making much progress.
But then that makes me wonder, right? Then you would go to this tempo here,
What is that doing to
and you're like, but the thing is, he's dropped the volume down. So he's at 8, and then 24 reps, down to 15 reps, down to 13 reps. He's like losing momentum towards the end of the week, and it doesn't look like he's really fatiguing it all that much. The RP can look high, but the fatigue can still be low. That's the thing with bench, is like the systemic fatigue versus how hard a set was isn't really the same. Whereas like a squat and a deadlift, I've seen the systemic fatigue kind of line up with how hard something was. If something was generally really hard on a deadlift, it's generally more fatiguing, usually, especially with taller lifters like this. But on bench, you can hit a high RP set and it's not fatiguing. So like systemically, that's why, like I said, he's losing momentum through the week. If we want it to peak at the end, we want to gain momentum through the week, get to the top, and then the beginning of the week is kind of, that drop is okay, rightfully so, as long as it's able to pick back up. And that's what Anas was saying, was that secondary day really plays a huge role in setting up the primary day. And if it's too far away from the primary day, you're just going to lose all of that up into the end of the week. I think he's losing it, but
Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot of, obviously with programming, there's like a lot of variables you can change. You can change exercise selection, you can change the amount of sets, reps, intensity, frequency. Where would you go from here? Like what would be like the first thing you start with?
well, I would lean straight into my bias and and get rid of the Larson right away. I tend to only like Larson presses as like more primer lifts, not as recovery lifts. I don't like bench. It doesn't need as much recovery as you think. It needs more priming over like say this recovery aspect, right? So I'd lean straight into that. I'd probably end up saying, okay, I want some kind of comp exposure for all 4 of these days, that would probably be the first thing that I personally would do, because putting a comp lift on each day will actually kind of tell me where the power is on each day. And then once I figure out where the power is on each day, then I can really tell where things are dropping off, picking back up, things like that.
So you're trying to build some consistency, that you're trying
Yes.
to have indicators.
I need indicators.
You need clear indicators, and like
Yeah.
Larson 8s are not a good indicator.
Larsons don't indicate anything. Larsons, you might as well just,
So it will be like a problem-solving process.
Yeah.
And you have 4 bench days, but if they are labeled, like they have this bias of this day has to be very low intensity, then you can't really know what the right exposure timing is. Like let's say like the Larson day shows up pretty strong because
I can make a fair bet that his Larson day is actually strong because his primary is actually
heavy.
setting it up.
yeah, so it might be, but you definitely need like a process.
Right.
So like if we were to break down like the process, the days be like a bit more consistent and like maybe taking out the variations that don't really have a good, like a decent, like a purpose. I don't know
Yeah.
what the purpose of, maybe there is, but if the bench hasn't progressed in a while, I would probably overhaul a lot of it and like go into, okay, let's make the standard, have like one standard for all days.
Yep.
Then see if we can get something out of the 4 days.
Yeah.
We'll start with the lowest impact changes because you don't want to take this person right into like a 5 or 6 bench days.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
with his archetype too, wouldn't really
it
make
doesn't
sense.
fit, yeah.
We would say 4 bench days is like a good starting point, and it seems like it produced some type of result, but maybe
Yeah.
there's like more to gain out of the frequency. Check the frequency box first, and let's see if we can optimize this frequency a little bit more. And like within this frequency, the first change would be, okay, let's start with the exercise selection, make it all 1.
Yep.
Then from there, like you'll get, after like a couple of weeks of training, you'll see some trends of, oh, my Monday is showing up
It
stronger.
actually is good. Yeah. And then, see, and that's kind of, and again, I guess I'll say I'm leaning into my bias, but I tend to start, like I said, with all competition lifts across the board. And once I notice that there's a day that's dropping off, or once I notice there's a day that needs more technique, once I know that there's a day that needs more priming, then I put in the Larson, then I put in the Spoto, then I put in the tempo. I usually put those in after I know where the power level is. But you can only find the power level by being specific with it, because then I know, like, okay, wow, like it breaks down right around the middle of the week and not the beginning of the week, and et cetera. So
Specific means more than exercise selection. So specific exercise selection is there. That is specific. Do you need more specificity? Do you need singles on all days? How do you have good indicators on those days?
Well, we know that, of course, if it's heavier, that we'll get a better indicator than a worse indicator. The only problem is we can't always just indicate with a low rep, like higher exertion all the time. What I like to do actually is I like to vary the indicators. So what that looks like is I'll tend to have an indicator at the beginning of the week that's a little bit higher rep. Am I indicating really good on a fitness aspect, right, early in the week? And then am I indicating pretty good in the middle of the week? And then am I indicating really good at the end of the week, right? It's like I indicate pretty often to know.
Every session is an indicator.
Yeah, exactly. But then we need a set, or we need something that tells us that we're on track, right? So for example, if I have a Larson press and I'm trying to indicate something, like the only way that would work is if I had already done a comp bench and I knew that comp bench did not work for this day because it wouldn't set me up for the rest of the week. Like if I already knew that retroactively, then yeah, I would be mindlessly doing my Larson 8s on that day. That would be okay. But yeah, I would still be probably chasing a specific number to know that I was indicating enough for the rest of the week. But what I'm saying is I think there's an addressment of things that if the specificity is not there first, then you can't know if that day actually is where it's supposed to be. And my guess is, like I said, he's doing a tempo on one day, he's doing a Larson on one day. He is getting pressing work in. Like he is doing what he needs to do, but he doesn't really know where what is supposed to be strong, except for one of the days. And more than likely, he's strong on at least one more of the days. And he's trying to get that secondary high, because he definitely ramped it up to 142, right? But of course, 142 for 5 is going to indicate kind of what he came out with, right? Which is like 167-ish by the end of the week. So the idea is more, how can we make the primary stronger, but we have to know that there's stuff underneath that's not helping it show up. So if we can't make it show up, then the whole thing doesn't actually spool up, or you're not able to get anywhere with it.
So you would have indicators throughout the week, and those can be anything. Those can be like the set of 5 is a good indicator of like the strength level, but if the variation is like far away, larger than 8s, that's like not a good indicator. You have no idea how strong the day is. So I would start with making it specific enough. And then, like David mentioned, we're trying to test those skill levels, strength levels, and fatigue levels on each day. Then from there, like, you know how things are trending, then you can set up a day or two to be strong. And like those can be, I think we've talked about it before. You ask questions like, how is like the pec feeling? How are the pecs feeling? You feel like soreness, inflammation, those kind of things, like the fatigue indicators. How is the strength, power feeling? And you can tell that by like the speed off the chest, like that will tell you like how strong the person is. And like technique is really visual, you can look at it. But setting those indicators throughout the week, every day is an indicator, every day is a stressor, and every day is an indicator. And it's just like a matter of kind of finding this perfect timing, exposure timing, and dosage for each one. Then from there, like we can dive into what do you need to set up each day. My first thing is, I think the average intensity, peak and average intensity is fairly low throughout the week. Like if the strength is lacking, and like you have like the hypertrophy is there, technique is okay, but strength is not there. Strength, like we talked about before, is driven by intensity, average or peak intensity. So I would look at finding ways to bias more intensity throughout the week by changing this like rep scheme and specificity, and finding the days that are strong and leaning into them and pushing heavier weights on the days that are feeling strong.
Yeah, makes total sense. I mean, I could even take it a step further with, like, you're talking about setting everything straight. Like I tend to like to start, you know, just by looking at how many reps each day has as well. And usually if you have a similar amount of reps each day, it's even easier to see where things are dipping, because your workload isn't dipping in the middle of the week. It's like your workload is staying more or less the same, and then where's the discrepancy, or when does it start to drop off?
Scientific method, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy. Just put everything flatly with the same variables and then see what actually starts to change.
Yeah. If you want to get stronger, you want to bench heavier more often.
Yeah.
For the second program, we have Noel.
Well,
Noel is, I would say, like, relatively new to powerlifting, maybe like a novice, you would call him a novice.
Yep, self-program ARC.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we'll review his program. So first of all, like how much of an impact do you think programming has on Noel? Do you think it has like
not that much.
Not that much, right?
No, not as much as, like, you want to talk about fine-tuning these last little bits of things. Like, there's not going to be a whole lot of that. There's going to be a lot more of, I do things, I build skill at things, I try harder than I try less hard. Yeah. I motivate myself by watching Pete Rubish videos before lifting, and
with the washer and dryer.
Yeah, exactly.
With the washer and dryer.
I motivate myself. Dan Green videos, you know, like.
I don't think people will get that.
No, nobody's gonna get that.
Anyone's gonna get that.
Nobody's gonna get that. Too old. Yeah.
Wait, I think for him, I guess, like starting with, okay, like how much does programming actually matter? I think it does matter.
It does, to an extent.
To an extent. As long as you have your basics, as long as you have the like progressive overload, the work is specific enough to the goal. It's not really doesn't have to be specific to like squat, bench, deadlift. If the goal is to get stronger on those, it has to be specific to that goal. For him, if his goal is to make progress and get stronger, the areas we would probably focus more on are probably like more movement related, like movement technique skill, related,
yeah,
like skill, hypertrophy, which I think he's doing actually
He's doing really good.
fairly well, like
Yeah.
better than like most people. I saw the Bayesian curls. I really like those. Like I think he's doing fairly well seeing those. If technique is good, he builds like a good base of muscle mass. Then like the programming nuances honestly don't they don't matter as much.
I think he's more or less like doing this right. You know, of course he sent us his program, so maybe he wants us to like maybe make sure that he's doing a lot of things like kind of the way he should. And you know, looking at this, you know, he has enough accessories, he has enough of the primary lifts to get things going.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing with self-programming is self-awareness. Build self-awareness, realize, wow, my hamstrings are underdeveloped for my quads. Wow, I keep losing stability here. I need to work on this aspect of my lift. Addressing that stuff like as soon as possible. So for example, he has a 3-day a week split where he's squatting, benching and deadlifting. Is he benching once pretty much? Like he's
No, he does
he's
more.
benching 3 times a week.
He did change it from like earlier blocks. He was
Okay.
training 3 times a week.
Yeah. And so this
those
one's different.
Later blocks, he is training 4 times a week.
Yep, added a little bit more bench as he went. And that's what you'll find kind of happens in your like self-programming journey is like you'll kind of set something out for yourself and you'll realize that, wow, if I'm only squatting once a week, like I seem to come in kind of like confused about like, you know, it feels kind of heavy, like I'm not doing it as often, so I can't, you know, like I don't feel as strong now that, because it got him somewhere, right? It got me to this point, but then what do I need to do next, right? So it's more about where am I at and what do I need to do next at this stage.
So I think for him, like the big rocks are making sure we're not hyper focusing on the programming, because like the programming doesn't have that much of an impact as much as the technique probably has long term or the muscle mass has long term. The programming is like fairly easy to problem solve as long as you're built a big enough base with the muscle mass and your technique, your movement is like really crisp, really clean. Then the programming is like doesn't really have to be anything fancy, honestly.
Yeah, and that's kind of how your first few years should go, ideally, in my opinion, is you're building a nice, good base of muscle. You're kind of figuring out where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and then you slowly get to better programming and better understanding as you go. Instead of trying to chase this golden
Microcycle.
Yeah, this golden. There's no such thing. It's anything is going to be kind of golden, like at the moment here. Like if you try hard enough, I think you might turn it into gold.
Yeah, well,
Like-
what will make it golden is how you move, your technique, your efficiency, and your muscle mass. Like if you have like a lot of potential, and you have the technique to back it up, and the strength is going to build itself. Like it's not
Sleep good, eat good, build some really good solid base of muscle. You know, make sure your technique is looking nice and crisp, and that's really what you want to focus on early on. Am I hitting a PR on my accessories?
Yeah.
Is it leading into PRs on my comp lifts? Like,
Are my legs getting bigger?
Yeah, am I visually getting what I want? And then from there, that's you then culminate, things.
So I think this is like an interesting case, because let's say you have someone come to you and they are starting off early in their career, and like they want to stay in this for 10 years, let's say. Let's just say he wants to keep lifting and powerlifting for 10 years. How would you approach his programming differently than like someone, obviously, like the other case where he's like is a top level, competing at the highest level? How would you structure this guy's programming to set him up for success in a few years?
Yeah, I mean, the way I like to look at it is like, if he has a 10-year plan, then I would probably separate it into years and probably say, okay, we do need benchmarks of progress on the main lifts per year, and making sure that that's moving at a decent rate over, say, like maybe a massive rate, and then making sure that muscle is being built kind of for the long term, right? Because we always see this happen, right? Where there's a lifter that gets 3 to 4 years in, they finally cap out on kind of the muscle that they built with the comp lifts, and then they realize that they have to go back and build more muscle, or they realize that's what happens is they realize that they built the muscle and it helped them retain for 2 or 3 years. And then they have to go back and do that again.
But the ceiling is so low.
And the ceiling is low because of that. Because you're stuck with the comp lifts in the technique that got you where it got you, right? Instead of course, your technique can be better if you have more muscle, believe it or not. Like, that's actually how that works. The stronger you are, the better your technique can actually possibly be, ceiling-wise. As far as specificity goes, things like that, just make sure that the meter is moving, but then make sure that the other metrics are like on a big, like
muscular meter, like muscular indicators.
Yeah, the ceiling is going up. Another thing I want to mention is you see a lot of lifters that are younger. They want to go to collegiate nats. They want to go to these big meets sooner rather than later. And that's kind of the thing that a lot of younger lifters fall into, is they have a certain goal, they pick up with a coach. It is the coach's job to help that lifter make that goal. Right? And that's actually what we keep seeing, and that's why we keep seeing burnout. That's why we keep seeing these things, is because people set their goals to be, because for example, collegiate nats, you do have to like get there before you graduate. So there, you kind of put a hold on that ceiling early, and then you end up hitting that peak and getting super excited that you won collegiate nats, or you got to collegiate nats, or you got somewhere. But little do you know that in order to get to the next level, what got you to that level is not the same. And that's what tends to happen, right? So, for, a lot of us, we started, and I don't know if this is just the times or whatnot, but we started with more hypertrophy base. We started with the bro lifting. Like, the bro lifting was the fun part, and then we slowly actually culminated into more specific things. And then even now, we're still going back to needing some of that, even now over the last 10 years. So what goes around comes around. Got to build the base to build the ceiling. Ceiling, you finally hit the ceiling, and then you finally get an overuse injury. You finally get something that says, hey, you just need to get stronger. There's nothing around this. You need more accessories. You need more of the things that really matter, instead of that golden microcycle you were leaning on for 3 to 4 years. So timeline wise, I think he's doing it right. He has the SBD kind of as an important thing, but he's really emphasizing his hypertrophy. He's really emphasizing his movement. I see some FFE squats in there. I see some, like same thing, the hack squat, so he's getting a lot of good ranges of motion, to be pretty well-rounded.
To summarize it, if the goal is strength expression at specific timeline, and like let's say the strength expression in a few years, then the supporting qualities are your muscle mass, technique to be able to express it. Those will be the biggest, and like obviously within his program, he has like a lot of movement variability. So he is moving through different ranges of motion, should help with the injury management. Healthy, builds like a lot of good muscle mass. Honestly, that would be like my biggest focus. I would put probably like bias like 70% of my workload into the hypertrophy building stuff. And yes, like the SBD does build some muscle mass, but it's not the best at it. So I would put more of my eggs into that basket of hypertrophy and focus on movement quality, because that will also help you manage fatigue in the short term and in the long term. If you're moving well, you can tolerate more work. So I would try to get the technique down as soon as possible, get the muscle mass, start working on it as soon as possible, because muscle mass takes the longest to build. Then like the strength expression, building strength and expressing it is it's fairly quick. You don't need years to be able to express strength. People need time to be able to build muscle mass. So I would start on the qualities that need the longest time to accumulate. Then from there, the strength will come as a result. And like when it's time for you to put more of your emphasis on strength expression, then you already have the muscle mass built, you have the technique already built. Then honestly, at that point, it gets super easy to express strength.
And when you're young, you can really build that muscle a lot quicker. I will say that, and that it's just kind of hard. Like it's hard being young, seeing people your age go into this golden microcycle sooner and seem like they're making progress sooner, because that's what everybody falls into. I need to do something sooner because all my friends were doing it. All my friends found this program that is more, now I'm squatting 3 days a week, and now I'm, overloading everything, trying to get everything going as quickly as I can. And those are the people that, I went to school, and literally a lot of them don't lift anymore because it's the same thing. Like the base wasn't built, and then the longevity was not built.
Yeah.
So
I think not only is it like physical qualities that you're building, you're also building the mental aspect of thing, which is like now you know what delayed gratification feels like. Okay, I need to wait, and like you're not in a rush, and like you're also like more resilient, because if things have to take a little bit more time, having a period where like you're not PRing your squat, bench, deadlift is fine. But now people kind of check out our podcast, the Burnout Podcast. We talk about people who are used to like that instant gratification. So like whenever they don't hit a PR for like a couple of months, motivation goes down, buy-in goes down, intention, and they just don't want to be in the gym anymore, because like it doesn't give them this the dopamine rush that they got into powerlifting for. So I think just focus on like I think it will definitely build those psychological skills alongside the physiological or physical skill qualities like the hypertrophy and the technique. Then like the strength will come later. And if you have like a good base of, I know this takes a while,
lifter
mature, delayed gratification, then you'll last a lot longer, and you'll actually have more success because you've managed your resources a lot better, rather than trying to express strength right away when you have like no muscle mass on your frame. Like, dude, like there's only so much those like 2 pounds of muscle mass can do. Like, please put on a little bit more muscle mass.
That's the thing. So
I think he can do more sets though. He only does like 2 sets on the accessory work.
But he's leaving like one rep in the tank.
Reserve. Yeah. As long as like those are true.
Yeah, they're true.
If they're true, one rep in reserve, I think you're on the right track for sure.
Yeah, he's leaving 0 on some of these, leaving 1 on all these. Not bad.
Yeah,
like
actually really
pushing
good.
It. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And he can do AMRAPs to test I like that he has rep ranges, because like for hypertrophy, if you set a specific number and you just
stop early.
You stop there, and like you have like 5 or 6 reps in reserve. It's like, I just hit the
goal.
You
won't know until you actually fail.
Yeah. I've done that before, where like I would do like a chest supporter row. I do like specific weight. I'm doing 12s. I do a set of 12s. Like I actually felt the burn, but then I did an AMRAP with it. Got 20 reps. Got 20 reps. So I was leaving like 8 reps in reserve. If you want to increase the magnitude of the hypertrophy work, you can maybe do like 3 sets, 4 sets, maybe increase the frequency here and there. Once the muscle mass kind of stalls out, like once you see like, okay, the rate of hypertrophy has slowed down, maybe I can add a little bit more work, a little bit more sets, maybe the frequency too. But overall, actually a really good program.
I can't really complain. Like and the thing is, like, I actually really like the 2 sets, especially if you're
early
hitting
on.
Yeah, I like the 2 sets because it's like imagine walking in and being like, okay, I got like RP9, I'm actually gonna like really kill myself on this. Mm-hmm. Do I really want to do it more than 2 times?
Yeah.
And then there gets to a point where obviously you'll become more resilient and maybe be able to handle like 3 sets. But 2 is like a good place to be like, because I know how athletes are. When they see 3 sets,
they dread it. Yeah.
They straight up are like, wow, apparently 3 is way worse than 2.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if 2 makes you work harder, then sure, let's go 2.
And it gives you room to grow too. It gives you room to do more. And I think also like within this, you can do like 1 set with 3 reps in reserve, 2 reps in reserve, 1 or 0 to 1 rep in reserve. Like if that lets you get more of like the work done, So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be.
It's whatever lets you get more.
Yeah.
Like or realize that you can get more, right?
Within this spectrum of you're close enough to failure that it is still productive.
Yeah.
But if you leave, like the first set, you do 8 reps in reserve. For the hypertrophy purposes, it's not the most productive. You're probably better off just pushing those extra few reps.
Yeah. I find myself doing that all the time, actually. I have 2 sets programmed where I'm like, I'm going to try really hard.
Yeah.
I do the first set, and I'm like, that one didn't count.
Yeah.
And then I end up doing 2 more, and then that ends up being
The working
3.
Yeah.
But that's how it usually ends up. But usually, if you know kind of where the true failure point is, then really 2 productive sets is pretty good.
It's a good starting
opinion.
for sure.
Yeah.
And obviously, all of these things they're individual, because like for each person, they might need 2 sets initially, and they're seeing good growth. But at some point, 2 sets might not be enough. Then maybe it's time to add a little bit more. But it's a good starting point. Then you know how to progressively overload. Just adding more work over time. It can be just like by how much load you're doing. Maybe like also with hypertrophy, like the time under tension or spending more time close to failure, or it could be like more volume. So you have a lot of options, but
Yeah.
the starting point is really solid.
Yeah, starting point's really good.
Cool.